All right, so let's listen through our song and let's try to pick out anything that we need to address in the mixing stage. Okay, so the first thing that I'm hearing is the low end just feels really inconsistent. And this could be because of a number of reasons, but what I'm thinking it is it's this bass line. Because the kick that we're playing, it's the same kick sample happening every single time, so that should sound really consistent. So what I'm thinking it is the bass line that's really inconsistent. And there's a few reasons why this could be happening. So one reason could be is this isn't audio, this is MIDI, and we're playing this bass line from a Serum preset. So if we open up the Serum preset, you can see on oscillator A, we're playing 3 different voices, they're all detuned, and the phase is random. So this means that every single time a MIDI note is triggered, it's gonna sound different because of the different phase on each of the voices. So you're gonna get a really inconsistent sound, there's gonna be a lot of phasing. So whenever I'm making bass lines in Serum, I always like to freeze and flatten them so I can reconstruct the bass line using audio so I get a really consistent sound. So that's what I'm gonna do. So first, I'm gonna duplicate this bass line track because we wanna have a copy of the original, and I'll turn this off. And then what I'm gonna do is delete this EQ because I don't wanna do like a low cut and then flatten it. If anything, I can flatten it, then put the EQ back on. So I'm gonna right click, hit freeze and flatten track. So if we look at our waveform, we can see it's very inconsistent. And what I mean by that is each note looks different from the next. I don't mind each note sounding different from the next, but this note is different from this note, which is different from this note and that note. There's no like larger pattern at play. So basically it just sounds very random. It sounds very messy. What I want to do is find my favorite individual notes and reconstruct a pattern that repeats and is consistent. So I'm just going to listen through this bass line. I like this little chunk right here. So maybe I can copy and paste this to the beginning, and let's just make a 1-bar pattern using these 4 notes that I copied. And we can zoom in and just make sure each note is faded. And this is the level of detail you can't really do in MIDI. It's just a lot harder. It's way easier and way more visual doing it in audio. So let's duplicate this across 1 bar. We'll highlight, hit Command L, and let's listen to what this sounds like with our kick. It sounds really repetitive and consistent, and that's exactly what we want because this is the driving force of our low end, along with the kick. That's why I rendered the kick out to an audio file, so the kick would be exactly the same every time, and then we need to do the same with the bass line. So I really like this 1-bar pattern, and then what we'll do is we can copy this EQ from our MIDI track back over to our audio. So now if we play it with the kick, really consistent and steady, and that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to consolidate this 1-bar pattern by highlighting and hitting Command J, and then we will duplicate this across, and we're going to use our MIDI track as our guide. So let's duplicate this across. We have this note change right here. So we need to highlight a 1/2 bar of this phrase that's just playing the root note and copy it over to the first half of this last bar. So we have... And actually, now that I'm listening, I think I like this 1 bar better. To me, it sounds more tonal. And again, that's the beauty of using audio is if I like that little snippet, I'm just going to copy it, paste it, and now we'll duplicate this across. And then we'll get to our turnaround and leave it like that. So now we have... And now we have our 8-bar phrase, and I like that a lot better. It's just more tonal. So I'll highlight this 8-bar phrase, hit Command J to consolidate, and now we have our 8-bar bassline pattern that's very consistent. We know exactly how it's going to sound, and that's what we want. So now, like I did with this first 8 bars, I'm going to use the MIDI clip as our guide. So let's duplicate this across. We'll cut off this last little bar, Command drag there, Command drag that, and we're just basically reconstructing this bassline with audio. All right, so there we go. We just copied our reconstructed bassline all the way across the track. And now we're going to have a much more consistent low end throughout the entire track. So some people wouldn't think of this as like a traditional mixing technique because I'm not like using plugins or compressors or EQs, but it's just a lot better to like freeze, flatten to audio and reconstruct the bass line using the notes that you really love. So now that we've done that, let's just go through and listen to our track. Sounds so much better, so much more consistent.